The date was the 22nd of September 1520. The founding sword of the empire, Selim the Grim, breathed his last near Çorlu. Selim left behind no other son to fight over the throne. It belonged to a single name. That name was Suleiman, born in Trabzon in 1494, now just 26 years old. He had grown up at his mother Hafsa Sultan's side, learning to govern the state in the provinces of Kef and Manisa. That long road from the quiet province of Manisa to the heart of Istanbul was carrying him toward his destiny. On the 30th of September 1520, the full weight of a vast empire ruling 3 continents fell onto his shoulders. From his father, he inherited a powerful state, its treasury overflowing with gold. Ahead of him lay one of the longest reigns in history. Europe underestimated this young sultan who took the throne. It didn't take long for them to realize this was a mistake. A year after taking the throne, Suleiman turned his gaze north, to the banks of the Danube. The walls of Belgrade, before which even his grandfather Mehmed the Conqueror had once stood, finally fell in 1521. A year later, it was the turn of Rhodes, the lock of the Mediterranean and home of the Knights. After months of resistance, the Knights of St. John finally abandoned the island and withdrew to Malta. At the very start of his reign, the young sultan had already thrown open Europe's gates on both land and sea. But Suleiman's true target was the Kingdom of Hungary, the heart of Central Europe. In the summer of 1526, the 2 armies met on the plain of Mohács. The thunder of Ottoman artillery and the iron discipline of the Janissaries decided the battle's fate instantly. The Hungarian army was wiped from history in just 2 hours. The young Hungarian king Louis II drowned in a marsh while fleeing. A kingdom collapsed in a single afternoon. After Mohács, the gates of Hungary were thrown wide open to the Ottomans. Drunk on victory, Ottoman banners pushed further west, toward Vienna, the Habsburg capital. In 1529, the world's most powerful army pitched camp before the walls of Vienna. But this time, the enemy wasn't only men. It was an early winter, rain and mud. The lengthening supply lines and dwindling provisions forced the Sultan to turn back. Vienna could not be taken, but it would become the border between 2 worlds, 2 faiths, 2 empires. The world of the 16th century was divided between 2 giants. On one side stood Suleiman, on the other, Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor who ruled half of Europe. These 2 rulers played a silent chess game for the fate of an entire continent. Left alone against Charles, the King of France found his solution in seeking help from Istanbul. By allying with a Christian king, Suleiman held the balance of Europe in his hands. The trade privileges he granted the capitulations were the favor of a ruler at the height of his power. Suleiman's gaze wasn't fixed only on the west. In the east, a powerful rival was rising too. The Safavid state in Persia was a challenge both political and sectarian. The Sultan pushed his army thousands of kilometers east in the famous Iraqine campaign. In 1534, Baghdad, the ancient capital of the caliphs, was added to Ottoman territory. With this, Suleiman became the most powerful ruler of both the West and the Islamic world. One domain remained not yet fully under control: the open seas. Barbarossa Hayreddin, once the Mediterranean's most feared pirate, now led the Ottoman navy. In 1538, off the coast of Preveza, the Crusader fleet suffered a crushing defeat. From that day on, the Mediterranean nearly became an Ottoman lake. Suleiman's banner now flew across 3 continents and 3 seas at once. But what truly made Suleiman immortal wasn't the territory he won, it was the order he built. He was not only a conqueror, but an architect of order. Through the law codes he issued, he redefined justice, protecting his people even from the abuses of the lowest official. With Sheikhul Islam Ebu Suud Effendi, religious and secular law were skillfully brought together. This is why his own people forever called him Kânûnî, the Lawgiver. Europe, faced with his splendor, could only call him by a single title: the Magnificent. Kânûnî's era was not only one of power, but a peak of civilization. Behind the Sultan's stern face hid a sensitive poet. Under the pen name Muhibbi, he wrote thousands of poems, quietly pouring the weight of the throne into verse. It was he who said, "There is nothing as esteemed among the people as the state." The genius of the age, Mimar Sinan, carved this splendor into stone and dome. The Suleymaniye Mosque, rising in 1550, was an era's signature written across the sky. The greatest transformation in this powerful sultan's life didn't happen on the battlefield, but inside the palace. Hurrem, who began as a concubine in the harem, soon became the sole owner of Suleiman's heart. Breaking a centuries-old tradition, the Sultan married her. A former concubine was now the empire's official chief consort, the Haseki Sultan. As the former favorite, Mahidevran, faded into the shadows, the entire balance of the palace shifted. Hurrem wrote her name in gold through charity, building mosques and complexes. The love letters between them carry, to this day, a warm truth behind the cold walls of the throne room. Another name in Suleiman's life was his childhood friend, Pargalı Ibrahim. From an ordinary young man, he rose to Grand Vizier, the most powerful man after the Sultan himself. Suleiman loved him so much that they often ate at the same table, slept in the same room. But his power and pride grew so great that friendship slowly gave way to suspicion. One night in 1536, in the palace, that extraordinary friendship was silently brought to an end. This great sultan, who ruled an empire, could not prevent tragedy within his own family. Shehzade Mustafa, favorite of the people and the army, came to be seen as a growing shadow over the throne. Palace intrigue and suspicion from every side turned a father against his own son. In 1553, in a campaign tent, Suleiman approved his own son's execution. The sensitive Shehzade Cihangir, unable to bear this grief, died of sorrow shortly after. Years later, Shehzade Bayezid too lost the struggle for the throne and was executed in distant Persia. As Suleiman won an empire, he lost, one by one, the sons he loved most. At the end of a 46-year reign, Suleiman was now an old, ailing man. Yet on his final campaign, he still rode at the head of his army, on horseback. In Ezerötszázhatvanhat, he laid siege to Szigetvár fortress in Hungary. But before the fortress fell, one night in his tent, that magnificent reign came quietly to an end. His Grand Vizier, Sokolu Mehmed Pasha, hid his death for days so the army wouldn't fall apart. The fortress was conquered in the Sultan's name, unaware that he had already died. Suleiman the Magnificent, who ruled 3 continents for 46 years, was sent off on his final journey like this. What remained behind was a code of law, a splendor, and a legacy that would challenge the centuries.